Everyone knows the story of Pompeii, a city swallowed in a single day by fire, ash, and silence. August 24th, 79, the day Vesuvius erupted. At least, that's what we've always believed. For generations, historians repeated this story based on the letters of Pliny the Younger. The summer sun, the intense heat, the sudden disaster. Everything seemed certain. But what if it isn't true? What if Pompeii wasn't destroyed in the summer, but in the fall? New archaeological discoveries reveal a different picture. A cool October day, pomegranates on the trees, people wrapped in cloaks against the cold, and a nearly overlooked piece of graffiti suggests something that changes everything. October, not August. Researchers have carefully translated the letters and checked the context. This is not a guess. This is evidence that history can shift because of a single line on a wall. Here begins the story of Pompeii as you've never seen it before. The city frozen in time, the people petrified in their final moments, their homes full of stories of a life abruptly ended. So, if you love lost truths and dark mysteries from the past, subscribe and discover how a single line on a wall rewrites the story of Pompeii. We thought history was reliable, that what's written in books is set in stone. But in the case of Pompeii, a single mistake was enough to sustain 2,000 years of deception. It didn't start with archaeologists. It started with writers and copyists. For centuries, Pliny the Younger's letters were painstakingly copied by hand. Every monk transcribing the text could make an error. And amidst ancient parchment and flickering candlelight, one small Roman numeral turned everything upside down. AV became an X. A month shifted. A mistake no one dared to question, because it seemed simply too old, too sacred to be wrong. And so we, 2,000 years later, build our knowledge on that single wrong character. Museums reconstructed August. Films, paintings, school books, all based on a number that should never have existed. It wasn't until archaeologists began to question the logic of summer that the mask fell away. They found winter fruit, cabbages and hearths, thick cloaks, small details that didn't fit with August, but that no one dared to challenge. Until we realized, what if we've been wrong? That was the moment history began to change shape. Pompeii was no longer a fixed fact, but a living mystery. One where every new discovery, every piece of evidence, could shift the truth. And among all those clues that revealed the date, something far more personal was hidden. No number, no mistake, but people, frozen in their final breath. Beneath the ash of Pompeii lay no myth. There were people, fathers, mothers, children, frozen in the moment their world ceased to exist. For centuries, it was thought that all that remained of Pompeii were ruins, stones, walls without voices. Until, in 1863, an Italian archaeologist named Giuseppe Fiorelli decided to do something different. At the edge of the city, among crumbling walls and dusty corridors filled with silence, strange, empty spaces were discovered, hollows in the hardened ash layer. Every touch produced a dull sound, as if something lay beneath the ash, something that had once lived. During the excavations, Fiorelli noticed something extraordinary. A hollow in the ash that wasn't immediately filled or destroyed. Instead, he allowed the space to be filled with liquid plaster. When it hardened and the ash around it was carefully removed, something appeared that no one had ever seen before. The silhouette of a body, frozen in the posture of its final moment. The ash had preserved their last moments, the folds of their clothing, the tension on their faces, even fingers still partially curled, trapped in one final attempt to breathe. For Fiorelli, that moment must have felt almost inhuman. For centuries, people had treated Pompeii as a place of stone, but here lay proof that the city had truly lived. What he uncovered were not ruins, but moments, frozen in time. In the years that followed, more discoveries came to light. Dozens of casts scattered across the city, but one find stood above the rest. 13 bodies, together in an open area, trapped in a single frozen second of despair. The ash had held their final movements. Later, that place was given a name, the Garden of the Fugitives. And although their posture makes it look as if they were running, it later became clear that they had barely any time to move. Many people don't know this, but death did not come from lava. It was not fire that consumed them, but a wave of scorching hot gas and ash, hot enough to snatch the air from their lungs in less than a second. Their bodies fell where they stood, breathing, not screaming. These discoveries were revealing, because through those casts, we learn more about how the people of Pompeii lived than from 1,000 ancient texts. Their postures, their clothing, their place in the city, everything told a story. They did not die as legends. They died as people. Some sought shelter, others tried to flee. The air thickened with ash and poisonous gases. Every breath burned, every step grew heavier. Daylight vanished. The heat came from all sides. In those final moments, there was no time for fear, only instinct. And that is why their bodies, frozen in white plaster, still speak volumes about what really happened. But among those bodies were also other clues, objects, remnants, symbols, that began to tell a strange story. Not about how they died, but exactly when. And that led researchers to a new discovery, one that shook history all over again. While the bodies of Pompeii told their final moments, another story lay hidden in the ground, one that had nothing to do with fear, but with time. During the excavations, aided by new technologies like 3D scanning and precise soil analyses, archaeologists kept finding more and more things that didn't fit with August, the month long accepted as truth. In the houses were pomegranates, fruits that are only harvested in October. In the ovens, they found chestnuts and nuts. In the wine amphorae, young wine, still fermenting from a just completed harvest. And then, there was something subtle, but impossible to ignore. The clothing. The victims' bodies wore thick cloaks, even woolen garments. No one dresses like that in the blazing summer of southern Italy. The city had prepared for cold, not heat. Individually, these were small, innocent details, but together they formed a pattern that could no longer be denied. Then researchers discovered the wall inscription with the words 16 Kalnov, October 17th, and everything fell into place. That single line was not just graffiti, it was a date that shattered centuries of silence. Pompeii did not perish under the summer sun, but in the cool air of autumn. A shift of 2 months, but one that changed everything. Why does this matter? Because it proves how fragile knowledge is. How even the truth, the hard, historical truth, can tilt because of something as small as a fruit pit, a sweater, or or a scratch on a wall. The image that had existed for centuries of Pompeii, of citizens sweating under the sun, of heat and summer light, had never been real. It was a reconstruction, built on a mistake. But even when we finally knew when they died, one question remained. How much more lay hidden beneath that ash? For Pompeii was far from fully told. It was only beginning to speak again. Pompeii no longer remained silent. Every street, every house, every stone now tells a story that lay hidden for 2 millennia. Recent excavations have revealed intact frescoes, paintings that adorn the walls of the House of the Lari, the household gods of Roman families. They show us rituals, family bonds, even the personal tastes of people who lived 2,000 years ago. In kitchens and ovens, archaeologists found nearly complete meals: bread, dates, olives, a bottle of wine, frozen in time, just as they were left. DNA analysis reveals who these people were, where they came from, and how they lived. A city once buried becomes a living laboratory of the past. Thanks to 3D scanning and modern techniques, researchers can now virtually walk through houses and even analyze the layers of ash to reconstruct the moment of the eruption. Every tiny detail, from a footprint in the mud to a hand pressed in the sand, rewrites the story of Pompeii a little more. And every new discovery, no matter how small, rewrites the story a little more, until even the ash itself no longer remains silent. We began with a simple question. When did Pompeii really die? But that answer revealed something far greater. History is not fixed. Facts can shift, even after 2,000 years. We saw how a single small piece of evidence, a line on a wall, was enough to correct 2,000 years of history. That is the power of research. One discovery can tilt the truth. As we uncovered this, the casts of the inhabitants remind us that these were real people, with stories, routines, and moments abruptly ended. Their homes, meals, and personal belongings show that Pompeii was never just an event. It was a living city, frozen in time. In every quiet street and wall, we still see traces of how people once lived, hoped, and dreamed. The certainty of August has vanished, but in its place, we have gained something far more valuable: the realization that truth lives. Even in ash that seemed silent for 2,000 years,